So, how does leadership need to change as a business matures and grows through their life cycle? And because ultimately, if we think about it, businesses often start as in one person or two people, and really right at the very beginning, those individuals have a drive to create something for themselves, almost always, or very, very often, and ultimately they're good at something. So whether it is a plumber or a carpenter or a business coach, as they get in, they kind of do what they need, what needs to happen to develop and to grow that business. So they're often what we'd say is working in the business, almost exclusively at that point in time. It's really a small business. Now, if you then fast forward all the way up to relatively large businesses like over 500 employees, for example, or maybe in multiple cities or countries even, you're going to have quite a relatively complex leadership structure. When I say relatively complex, you may have maybe 3 leadership teams or more, maybe, within the organization that have to interact and interlink with each other. And they probably also have a board as well, of course, and they may be even on the share market themselves, so therefore have to report through the Australian Stock Exchange. The leaders in that large, complex organization, we're almost exclusively working what we call on the business. So that means they are doing a lot of critical thinking, a lot of focusing, a lot of communication, a lot of leadership within teams and leadership across that organization, rather than necessarily doing. So therefore, we know if we think of it at those two extremes, we then need to move from, we can call it a visionary doer in that really small organization, right up to, again, a visionary, but more a person that is working on relationships within the organization and external from the organization, be them shareholders, board members, etc. So as it changes, we're then going to need slightly different leadership styles, and also not only leadership styles. So when I talk about styles, I mean, Daniel Goldman actually lists out the 6 styles that he developed: affiliate, coaching, commanding, democratic, pace setting, and visionary. So of those 6, there's probably a certain tendency that a certain individual has. So they might be slightly biased more towards, let's say, the commanding one. That's probably what was seen in the early days as leadership. But really, leadership is a lot more than that. Commanding isn't like, come on, we're going this way, let's not discuss it. So as you then move from the smallest to the largest, the combinations of those are going to be slightly different. Are needed to be slightly different depending on the size of the organization and the context you're in. When I say context, I mean, if something occurs like a pandemic, that means that we need to kind of get behind a certain leader, and maybe a commanding style. It means that the company can respond in that crisis. So whereas if context is a lot more meaning that we need to be able to create better relationships within the organization, then they need to take more of an affiliate approaching and more coaching approaching. So depending on the context, depending on the size of the business. But also then if we take that and look at, well, how much time do they spend on the visionary side of things, i.e. working, on the business in particular, and also the actual, what we call specialist skills. So specialist as in like doing the doings. It's like your plumber going out and doing the plumbing work. So your specialist or your visionary skills, and then also your coaching skills or the relationship skills, which is actually developing the people, the relationships, particularly within the organization, but of course with whether external suppliers or clients, of course, etc. So what proportion of their time do they spend on those 3 areas as well, irrelevant of their leadership style? So, are they actually spending time on the vision and developing out, the values of business? Are they working the relationships, building those things up? Or are they actually doing the doing? And early on in an organization's life, you need to do more of the doing. And as you get further along, it's much more about the relationships and the visionary side of things. But you've also got those leadership styles, and often we have a natural bias towards one or multiple ones of them. So you may need different leader types. And in fact, what I will point out is that as a business flips from about 20 employees to 25, 30 is a key point in a business life cycle. And that's when you're moving from a what we call owner-centric, where really it has been that leader that has a visionary element and is good at the specialist element, whether it's plumber or whether it's business coach, etc., whatever it is, to then actually then flipping it to an enterprise-centric, or the beginning of becoming an enterprise, which is then when you need your leadership team in place and starting your management team as well. So that then the need for the relationships needs to be expanded, and that less time is spent on doing the doing. So we actually need to shift. Either the key leader needs to change their proportions that they spend and their leadership style. They need to probably move more from commanding towards more coaching at that point in the life cycle of the business. Now, they might not actually be able to do that. So if they can't do that, and they can't do it with business coaching or with individual executive coaching, then maybe a new leader is required, or a new type of leader is probably a better way to put it. And that's really just a key example of when businesses grow and the leadership needs of those businesses change. There are some other points, but that's the one that most businesses will encounter as they move from around 20 to 25, 30 employees, is that the leader needs to change their approach. And I think that's a key takeaway to understand, is that not only do they need to look at the way that their leadership style and the mix of those styles, or the emphasis, which one they emphasize over another, which is the one they go to first, and how they proportion their time of focus on the visionary element, or the relationship element, or the specialist element. So that's how leadership styles need to, or how leadership full stop needs to change as an organization grows. And also that, just to finish this off, when necessarily a crisis occurs, like a pandemic or a new competitor comes out of the woodwork, is that maybe the leader also needs to change their style through that period. Maybe they need to move more towards commanding. So it's understanding and being aware that there are times that different leadership mixes, I think I would use the word, or blend, is needed to move an organization forward.